December 7th, 1941, did not start like a battle. It started like a normal Sunday that did not know it was about to end. 8-year-old Dorothy is asleep in a small wooden house on Oahu. In a few weeks, it will be Christmas. Her biggest worry is something small and childish, the kind of worry you forget by lunchtime. War is a word from far away, a thing that happens to other people. Then the bedroom hits her like a fist. A blast lands close enough that the whole house snaps and jumps. Dorothy is thrown out of bed and slams onto the floor. The window shatters and glass rains across the blanket and the boards. When she tries to push herself up, sharp pieces slice her palms. Her ears ring so hard, she cannot tell if she is screaming or if the scream is trapped inside her head. For 1 second, she thinks it is an earthquake. Then she hears engines, many engines, low and fast, not passing by, coming in. Her mother bursts into the room, grabs Dorothy by the arm, and drags her into the hallway. Dorothy looks up and sees her mother's face. It is the first time Dorothy has ever seen an adult lose control of their own fear. Not worry, not anger, fear. That look is the first real lesson of the day. A child does not measure danger by the size of an explosion. A child measures danger by the way a parent's voice changes. They rush under the house. The adults try the radio. It is dead. The power is out. Someone keeps twisting the knob anyway, like the right station can explain what is happening. The beams above them vibrate with every hit. Dust falls like dirty snow. Dorothy's mother holds her so tight. Dorothy can feel her mother's heart hammering through her nightgown. Outside, the air has a new sound. Not one plane, many, a swarm, the kind of sound you cannot count. Across the harbor, 10-year-old Robert hears it too. He runs to the window because a low-flying plane is exciting. He expects an American aircraft, something familiar, something safe. Instead, he sees dark silhouettes with red circles on their wings. His mind tries to fix it, tries to turn it into a drill, a mistake, anything that makes sense. Then, the first bomb drops, and an airfield erupts into a fireball, so tall it looks unreal. A moment later, he feels heat on his face from far away. His father works on base. Robert bolts for the door. His mother tackles him. Not a grab, not a shout. A full-body collision that knocks him down. She drags him back inside and locks the door with shaking hands. Robert fights her, twisting and kicking, yelling that his father is in that smoke. And his mother does something worse than yelling back. She does not answer. She just holds him, silent, because she does not know what to promise. That silence becomes the second shock, because when adults cannot explain, children build the ending in their own heads. Robert presses his face to the glass and watches smoke swallow the place where his father is supposed to be. He cannot run there. He cannot call anyone. He cannot even understand why the planes have red circles. He only understands that something has taken control of the sky, and the sky is over his father. Back under the house, Dorothy hears a sound she will never forget. A thin whistling drop, then a deep impact that makes the floor lift. The adults flinch before the next blast even lands, like their bodies are learning the rhythm. Dorothy copies them without thinking. That is how fear becomes training. A child's nervous system rewrites itself in real time. When the attack finally fades, it does not leave peace behind. It leaves a different kind of noise. Adults talking too fast, adults crying without trying to hide it, adults saying words that do not belong in a child's home. Enemy, attack, dead. Hours later, the war crosses the ocean through a radio. On the mainland, it is still Sunday. Kids are eating breakfast. Parents are fixing things around the house. Music is playing. Then the broadcast cuts in. A father in California is under a sink tightening a pipe. When the announcer says Hawaii and attack in the same breath, the man freezes. He does not finish the repair. He does not wipe his hands. He sets the wrench down like it suddenly weighs too much and turns up the volume. His son watches him and waits for the usual adult response. A calm explanation, a joke, a reassurance. It does not come. The father just listens, staring at nothing, as if the room has gone cold, and the boy understands something without being told. If a grown man cannot move, the danger is real. That night, in a coastal town that has never been bombed, a siren test is scheduled for the first time. Most families do not even know it is a test. At 2 a.m, the sound tears through the neighborhood like an alarm inside a skull. Lights snap on, doors open, bare feet hit cold floors. Parents rush through dark hallways, grabbing children who are half asleep and confused. A boy is carried outside, wrapped in a blanket, his face pressed into his mother's shoulder. He can feel her breathing fast. He can feel her hands shaking. For the first time in his life, the night is not just dark. The night feels hunted. When the siren stops, nobody laughs it off. Nobody goes back to bed like normal. Fathers stand on porches staring at the sky. Mothers check windows and locks. Kids listen for the sound to come back. And that is the moment the fear becomes permanent. A 6-year-old girl asks her father a question that sounds simple but is not. Can they come here? He opens his mouth to say no, because that is what fathers are supposed to do. They are supposed to build a wall with words. But he hesitates. He thinks about ships burning in a harbor he has never seen. He thinks about how nobody saw it coming. He thinks about the fact that this morning he would have laughed at the idea. Then he closes his mouth. The girl sees it. She does not need a map. She does not need statistics. She has just watched her father fail to promise safety. That is how childhood changes, not only in explosions, but in broken sentences. In the days that follow, small things in American homes start changing shape. Parents move beds away from windows. They tape an X across glass. They stack canned food in places it does not belong. They start measuring basements and closets with a seriousness that scares their children more than any newspaper. A 9-year-old girl wakes up and finds her mother taping the glass. She asks why. Her mother answers without thinking. So, it does not cut you when it blows in. For the child, that sentence is not advice. It is a forecast. And now, the real question begins. If the sky can reach into a child's bedroom, what is a home supposed to become before it happens again? When fear turned into construction, it did not look heroic. It looked like parents trying to erase one question from their children's faces. What do we do if it happens here? In Ohio, 14-year-old Helen comes home from school and finds her backyard marked off with string, a rectangle under the apple tree. Her father is standing over it with a shovel like he is about to dig a grave. He is not angry. He is not dramatic. He is focused. Helen asks what it is. Her father answers without looking up. A shelter. Helen has heard the word on the radio. She has seen the drawings in the newspaper. They always look clean. They always show smiling families. They never show the dirt. They never show what it feels like to watch your father dig a hole because he thinks the sky might try to kill you. By the next morning, the digging starts. The first foot goes fast. Then, the soil changes. Clay grabs the shovel and refuses to let go. Roots twist around the blade. Rocks appear where the drawing promised empty earth. Helen's hands blister. Her younger brother cries that the handle hurts. Their father tells him to keep going. Helen slows down once, just once, and her father says the sentence that locks the whole project into her brain. "We are doing this so you do not die upstairs." He does not say it to scare her. He says it like a fact. After that, nobody argues. Nobody complains. They dig because the alternative is imagining their kids in a bedroom with glass exploding inward. 2 weeks later, the hole is deep enough. They pour a thin concrete floor. They build walls out of rough boards that were never meant to hold weight. They nail a ceiling across the top and shovel dirt over it because the booklet said dirt equals protection. When the shelter is finished, it looks like a scar in the yard with a metal pipe sticking out of it. A vent. A promise. A lie if it is built wrong. Helen's father insists they test it. They climb down a ladder into a dark box. The air smells like wet earth and raw wood. The lantern throws shadows that make the ceiling feel lower than it is. Helen's mother sits too still, like moving would spend oxygen. After 10 minutes, Helen's little brother starts coughing. He says he cannot breathe. Helen's mother tells him to stop, because mothers are supposed to stop fear from spreading. But Helen hears it anyway, the tight edge in her mother's voice. Their father tells them to stay. 1 hour to get used to it. That is when Helen realizes what a shelter really is. It is not a place you go to feel safe. It is a place you go because you are not safe anywhere else. They make it 15 minutes more. Then the lantern flickers, just for a second. But in that second, Helen sees her father's face change. Not panic, calculation. He checks the vent pipe. He taps the wall. He listens to the air like he is listening to a sick person breathe. And Helen understands the most terrifying part. Her father does not actually know if this works. He just needs to believe it does. They climb out early. Nobody talks about it at dinner. Helen's father says the shelter is good. Her mother nods too quickly. Her brother sleeps with his mouth open that night, like he is trying to steal extra air. A week later, the first hard rain comes. Helen wakes up to her father running through the house in boots. He drags a pump into the yard. He yanks open the shelter door, and a smell rises out of the hole, cold and rotten. Water. The shelter is filling. The floor they poured is covered. The wooden walls sweat. The dirt roof holds for now, but the earth is shifting. The pump coughs and spits. The water rises again. The hole becomes a muddy pit that eats everything they stored inside. Helen watches her father's hand shake as he works, not because he is cold, because the one thing he built to control fear is turning into proof that fear cannot be controlled. He closes the shelter door and just stands there in the rain. That is the moment Helen stops believing in drawings. Across the country, 8-year-old Thomas learns the same lesson in a different kind of trap. Thomas lives in Los Angeles. His family does not have a basement. The ground is hard. Money is tight. A backyard shelter is impossible. So his father chooses the only place in the house without windows, a front hall closet. Thomas watches the closet get emptied. The coat rod is ripped out. Shelves are bolted to the studs. Cans are stacked like bricks. Water jugs line the floor. Flashlights. Batteries. Then, his father places a metal bucket in the corner. Thomas laughs because he is 8 and the bucket looks stupid. His father does not laugh back. Because if bombs start falling, we are not going outside again. That sentence changes the closet. It is no longer a closet. It is a room designed for the moment the world outside becomes unreachable. Once a month, Thomas's father runs a drill. He orders everyone inside. 5 people cram into a space meant for coats. Knees press into knees. The air warms fast. The lantern makes it worse because it proves how little space they have. His father sets a kitchen timer where everyone can see it. 1 hour. At first, Thomas's little sister cries and claws at the door. Their mother whispers that it is only practice, but her voice shakes. Thomas tries to joke and is told to be quiet. Then the drills start changing. The crying stops. The jokes stop. The family learns to sit still and listen to their own breathing while a red second hand crawls around a cheap clock. Thomas learns something that no child should have to learn. He learns how to shut off panic. He learns how to go numb on command. That is what these first shelters did to kids. They did not just prepare them for a war that might come. They taught them what it would feel like to wait for the war in the dark. And the worst part is what parents refuse to say out loud. If you build a place to hide, you are admitting that hiding might be necessary. Helen cannot look at the apple tree without seeing the scar in the dirt. She cannot forget her father standing in the rain, staring at a flooded hole, realizing he built a trap by accident. Thomas cannot look at the closet door without imagining it closed, without imagining the timer, without imagining the bucket and the air getting warmer. Adults built shelters to feel in control. Kids saw the shelters and understood the truth. The threat was real enough to build a box for it. And now, a new fear is spreading through neighborhoods. Not just fear of bombs, fear of getting the box wrong. Gas masks did not arrive in American schools because someone thought they were educational. They arrived because adults were afraid of something they could not point at in the sky. Helen is 14 and already knows that drawings lie. The shelter her father built looked perfect on paper and turned into a flooded box in the first real storm. So when her homeroom teacher wheels in a metal cart stacked with cardboard boxes, Helen does not expect safety. She expects another reminder that the world is not under adult control. The teacher opens a box and pulls out a rubber mask. It looks like a face without a person. It smells like tires and chemicals. She tries to sound calm as she explains what poison gas does to lungs, how it burns from the inside, how it kills people who are caught without protection. The room stops sounding like a classroom. Then, the teacher holds up a stopwatch. 30 seconds. She tells them that is how long they have to get the masks on. Not in theory, in reality. In the kind of reality where hesitation is the same as standing still in front of a bomb. She shouts one word, gas. Desks scrape. Chairs fall. Hands grab for rubber. Helen's fingers fumble with the straps. The mask is heavier than it looks. The lenses fog as soon as she breathes. A boy next to her pulls his mask on crooked and bursts into tears when the teacher resets the watch and tells him to do it again in front of everyone. The teacher is not being cruel. She is terrified of what happens if he fails when it is not a drill. Helen finally gets her mask on. Rubber seals around her cheeks. Her voice turns into a muffled rasp. Breathing feels like dragging air through a straw. She looks around and sees 20 faces turned into the same blank rubber stare. For the first time, she realizes what the masks really do. They make it impossible to pretend that the danger is far away. After the drill, the teacher says they did well. She tells them they will be safer now. Helen pulls the mask off, and the classroom smells normal again, but the normal smell does not feel the same. It feels like something that can be taken away. That night, Helen's father puts a kitchen timer on the table. He slides her mask across to her. "Lights off," he says. He is not dramatic. He is practical in the way scared people become practical. He tells her to put the mask on in the dark until she can do it without thinking. The timer clicks loud in the silence. Helen's hands move fast. She misses the strap once and loses 4 seconds. Her father does not yell. He just resets the timer. Again. She wants to ask him what happens if the gas comes while she is asleep and the mask is across the room. She does not ask. She can see in his face that he has not let himself think about that version of the night. In Los Angeles, Thomas is 9 and thinks he has already met every kind of fear inside a closet. He knows what it feels like to sit in the dark with a bucket in the corner and a timer on the shelf, learning how to turn off panic. He thinks he is ready for anything. Then his school does a combined drill. Masks and duck and cover together. The teacher does not warn them which one is coming. She just teaches the routine and tells them they have to react without thinking. Thomas sits at his desk, mask on the corner, workbook open. The teacher shouts, "Flash." Thomas dives under his desk. His knee slams into the metal leg, and pain shoots up his thigh. He does not cry. He wraps his arms around his neck like he was taught, and presses his face to the floor. He listens to his heartbeat hammering in his ears. The teacher walks between rows, counting seconds. Then, without letting them up, she shouts, "Gas." Thomas's brain jams. His body is already folded under the desk. His mask is on top. He has to choose between staying down like he is supposed to in a bombing and getting up to put on the mask like he is supposed to in a gas attack. He hesitates. 1 second. 2. The teacher slams her hand on his desk and yells his name. The sound hits harder than the knee pain. Thomas scrambles out, grabs the mask, straps it on crooked, and dives back down. He can hear the teacher's stopwatch clicking near his head. "Too slow," she says. The drill ends. Some kids rip their masks off and start laughing, because that is the only way they know to burn off the panic. One girl stays under her desk a few seconds too long, wetting herself in silence because she does not want to move without being told. The teacher tells her to stand up and acts like nothing happened. Thomas walks home with a bruise on his knee and a new thought stuck in his head. There are now situations where doing one right thing means failing at another right thing, and he is 9. Sirens make it worse. They go up on firehouses and factory roofs, metal mouths waiting to scream. The first few tests happen in the daytime. People stand on sidewalks and look up. Kids clap their hands over their ears and grin because they still believe adults would not scare them without a good reason. Then one night, a coastal city runs a full blackout drill. 2 in the morning. The siren starts as a low wail and climbs until it feels like it is inside every wall. Lights snap on across whole blocks. Parents stumble into hallways half-dressed, shouting names. A mother grabs her son so hard, he drops the toy he was sleeping with. She hauls him toward the basement before he knows if he is awake. On the street, a car crashes into a pole because the driver is looking at the sky instead of the road. The drill ends 20 minutes later. The siren cuts out. The official message says the city did well. Nobody sleeps. Kids lie in their beds with their ears tuned to the outside. They know what the sound means now. It is not a curiosity. It is a countdown that might start without warning. Schools become the place where that countdown is rehearsed. Teachers start doing unannounced drills. In the middle of a spelling test, in the middle of lunch. One moment Thomas is forming letters, the next his teacher shouts flash, and 30 children vanish under desks. The whole room moves like a single machine. The better they get at it, the worse it feels. Because drills are graded, time is written down, mistakes are noticed. Helen watches a younger class one afternoon as they practice masks in the gym. Fire hoses spray a mist overhead to simulate gas. A girl's mask leaks and water runs down her collar. She panics, rips the mask off, and stands coughing and soaked while the principal writes her name on a clipboard. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. The clipboard says enough. That night, Helen lies in bed and realizes something she cannot unlearn. Survival has become a test you can fail in public. Kids who used to be praised for good grades are now praised for how fast they get under a desk, for how quickly they seal a mask, for how quietly they stay in the dark. The drills do make them faster. They also do something adults never put in any pamphlet. They teach children that breathing is no longer something you can take for granted. It is something you earn by reacting correctly. Helen keeps her mask on the chair next to her bed. She tells herself it is just convenient. Thomas does the same and tells nobody. He knows his parents would see what it really is. A private admission that he expects the siren to come while he sleeps. Parents look at the numbers and feel proud. Millions of masks distributed. Thousands of drills completed. Response times dropping. Children look at their own hands and feel something else. They feel the weight of knowing that if their fingers miss a buckle in the dark, there might not be a second chance. The sky has already proven it can reach their homes. Now, every drill leaves them with the same quiet question. When the real moment comes, will my body move fast enough? And if it does not, what happens to me then? When homemade fear started failing, it did not fail in speeches or pamphlets. It failed in the seconds when a family finally did what they had practiced and discovered the plan was a trap. Helen learns that on a night that was supposed to be just another siren test, their backyard shelter has already flooded once. The wood has swollen, dried, and swollen again, like something trying to heal and failing. Even with the door nailed shut, the smell of mold still leaks up from under the apple tree, a warning her father keeps stepping over. He tells himself the next rain will be lighter. He tells himself the sirens will stay drills. Then, the radio mentions a heightened state of alert on the coast. The words are vague. The feeling is not. When the siren goes off after midnight, it does not sound like routine. It sounds like paperwork turning into consequence. Down, her father says. They tear the boards off the shelter door with their bare hands. Helen and her brother climb down first. The lantern makes the damp walls shine like skin. The air feels thicker than she remembers, as if the hole has been breathing without them. Her mother hesitates at the top. Her father tells her there is no time. They squeeze onto the benches. The siren outside drills through the dirt roof, steady enough to make the brain start counting how long it has been going. Every distant sound could be planes, thunder, or nothing at all. The timer on the lantern case starts its slow circle. At first, there is only tight silence. Silence is what families do when they are trying not to hand fear to their children. Then, Helen feels something cold against her shoe. Water. Not much. Just a thin line seeping in where the wall meets the floor. Her brother sees it too. His eyes widen, and he pulls his feet up like the water can bite. The lantern catches the wet and turns it into a shining stripe that grows by inches. Her mother looks at her father. Her father looks at the door. The siren keeps going. There is no explosion, no blast, no gas, just the sudden, sick clarity that the room designed to save them is becoming a box that can fill. Helen's mind does what children's minds do when adults stop explaining. It finishes the story fast. The hatch jams from swollen wood. Dirt collapses against the door. The water rises from ankles to knees, while the siren screams above them like a clock that will not stop. Her father makes a choice. Up. Now. They scramble for the ladder before the timer hits half a circle. Helen's brother slips on a wet rung and smashes his shin. The sound he makes is small, but it carries in that tight space like a crack. Her father hauls him the rest of the way by his arms. They burst into the yard and slam the shelter door shut. They stand under a sky that is empty, but still screaming, breathing hard as if they ran from something that chased them out of the ground. The siren stops 10 minutes later. The official report the next day calls it a successful exercise. Helen never goes back down into that shelter again. The hole under the apple tree becomes a symbol in her mind, not of safety, but of how badly adults can misjudge danger even when they mean well. She cannot unknow the difference between being afraid of bombs and being afraid of the thing built to protect you. Her father understands that too. He just does not admit it out loud until a neighbor brings different news. A cousin on a Navy base talks about new huts going up near the runways, steel ribs, curved roofs, structures that arrive in pieces and go up in a day. The cousin says they loaded them with sandbags and blasted them with hoses. They tried to break them before anyone slept inside. That single detail hits harder than all the measurements on the page. Someone, somewhere, is finally assuming failure first. Helen's father stares out the window at the scar in the yard while the neighbor talks. The memory of water creeping across the shelter floor sits in the back of his throat. Pride tells him he already did what he could. Fear reminds him that his best effort almost turned into a coffin with a ladder. Fear wins. He starts saving in quiet ways. Fewer treats, fewer movies, fewer new clothes. Months later, a truck leaves a long wooden crate on the curb. There is no sales pitch printed on the side, just numbers, weight, and a destination. They pry it open and see steel. Ribs, panels, bags of bolts. No shovels, no concrete, no guesswork. The apple tree watches as the family and a few neighbors turn the same rectangle of ground into something else. The ribs stand like a spine. The panels go on like armor. Each bolt feels like an apology for the night they ran from their own shelter. When the last tool is put down, Helen steps inside. The siren is not sounding today. It does not need to. She knows exactly how that sound lands in her chest. She imagines it starting now, imagines the family rushing out here instead of down a ladder into wet rot and swelling wood. The curved steel over her head does not care about imagination. It cares about load and stress and the fact that someone, somewhere, tried to hurt it on purpose before letting a child stand beneath it. Her father rests his hand on one of the ribs. This time he does not say, "This will save us." He says, quietly, "This will still be here at the end of the night." In Los Angeles, Thomas's turning point comes with real weather, not a siren. His father's closet drills have taught him how to go numb, how to sit in the dark with a bucket and a timer and pretend the outside world does not exist. The first time he hears about steel shelters, they might as well be on another planet. There is no room in their yard. There is barely room between houses. But a mechanic down the street mentions surplus panels for sale. Dented, scratched, cheap. Good enough for someone who is sick of watching his kids practice fitting into a box designed for coats. Thomas watches his father drag the panels home one by one. The garage becomes a workshop. 2 curved ribs get bolted to the floor. Panels screw over them to make a half-cylinder pressed against the existing wall. It is not perfect. One seam lets in a sliver of light. The floor is just concrete with a rug. It is still the biggest space Thomas has ever associated with the word shelter. They do not have to wait long for a test. A storm rolls in off the Pacific with wind that howls in the eaves and rain that hits the roof like thrown gravel. The power flickers and dies. Somewhere in the city, a transformer pops. The siren does not sound, but it does not have to. The sky is already loud enough. Closet or garage, his father says. It is not really a question. They choose steel. All 5 of them sit in the curved room while the storm throws itself at the house. Rain hammers on shingles, then changes tone as it hits the metal skin overhead. Deeper, steadier, like the weather is being forced to speak in a lower voice. The structure shudders once in a heavy gust and then settles. Water snakes under the garage door and stops at the first rib. Inside the curve, the air stays dry. Thomas's little sister counts thunder between flashes. His mother's shoulders loosen a fraction when she realizes no one is sitting on her feet. The timer ticks on a crate like always, but now it is just rhythm, not a sentence. A piece of debris slams into the outside wall with a crack that makes everyone flinch. The steel does not dent. Thomas presses his palm against the cool curve and feels the storm as vibration instead of threat. For the first time since the closet drills began, he believes a shelter can be both small and honest. It can admit the danger and still stand up to it. Hundreds of miles away, on a wet field at Quonset Point in Rhode Island, an architect named Otto has built his entire role in the war around that idea. He has seen what happens when people improvise with wood and hope. He has read reports about roofs caving in and walls buckling. He knows fear makes people accept any plan that sounds confident, whether it deserves that confidence or not. So he designs as if there will always be one more sandbag, one more child leaning against the wall, one more storm than anyone expected. He tells the men testing his huts to push harder. More weight, more water, more wind. If it fails, it needs to fail now, he says, when the only thing under it is mud. The first time they give him what he asked for, the storm does not come from the sky. It comes from pumps and hoses and men who do not mind trying to break something the Navy paid for. They stack sandbags higher than the notes call for. They turn the nozzles until the spray hits the steel like thrown stones. Wind off the bay shoves the water sideways so it claws at seams instead of sliding off. Otto stands inside one of the huts with a clipboard he is no longer reading. The air smells like wet metal and canvas. The curved skin overhead booms and vibrates, changing tone with each gust. This is the part he understands. Loads, stresses, deflection. The numbers in his head say it should hold. Then a sound cuts through the rest. Not the deep drum of water on steel. A dry, sharp crack above a joint where 2 panels meet. For a moment, his body reacts faster than his training. His shoulders flinch. His heel shifts toward the door. His mind shows him the whole failure in one flash. Seam opening, panel edge lifting, arc losing its shape, the curve becoming a mouth that tears itself open. He forces himself to look. A hairline line has appeared along the row of bolts. It is small enough that a drop of water almost hides it, but he can see the metal working, opening and closing with each pulse of pressure. The hut is not collapsing. It is warning him. He could shut the test down, call it good enough, blame the wind, the extra water, the men for overdoing it. He can feel the excuse forming in his throat, ready to come out as an order. He swallows it. "Turn it up," he yells instead. Outside, the pump's grown higher. The spray thickens. The crackle on the roof gets meaner. Inside, the little line above the joint trembles on the edge between flaw and failure. Otto drops the clipboard. His hands suddenly feel too big for the wrench, too clumsy for the tiny increments he needs. He braces his shoulder against the rib to steady both of them, his own weight becoming one more load the hut has to carry. Every instinct says this is the wrong time to be inside. He tightens the bolts by quarter turns, moving fast but not blindly. He slides a reinforcing plate over the seam, drives the bolts through both layers, pulls the panels into one. In the worst spot, he wedges a small steel angle against the rib, changing how the stress travels through the curve. It is not pretty. It is not in the drawings. Another gust hits. The hut shivers around him. The sharp crack does not come back. The sound overhead drops into a lower register, the frantic edge smoothed into something heavy and steady. Water keeps hammering. The wind keeps pushing. But now the seam moves as a line, not as a set of teeth trying to separate. Otto stays where he is for another full minute after he could have walked out. His forehead rests against the cold rib. He is not listening to the storm anymore. He is listening for the absence of one small sound that would mean watching his design fail the way Helen's father's shelter failed, quietly, at the worst possible time. When he finally steps outside, the men at the pumps are grinning, soaked through, asking if they should keep going. He looks at the hut the way Helen's father looked at the scar in the yard. One memory offers him an easy way out. That was close. Do not push it. He takes the harder one. Again tomorrow, he says. Harder. His name will not be in Helen's textbook. Thomas will never learn it in school. Parents will not whisper it when they herd their kids into steel curves during blackout drills. But every time a siren wails for 30 minutes and the shelter roof does not drip, every time wind claws at panels and they only hum, his choices are the reason a child's fear does not have to include the ceiling falling in. Homemade fear taught kids that adults could build boxes that betrayed them. Steel begins to teach them something new. A box can be tested until it deserves their trust, and that quietly resets the stakes. Because if one engineer with a pencil and no uniform can change what it feels like to hear a siren at night, what else in this war might change the moment the right person decides failure is not an option? June 6th, 1944, does not start with a siren for Helen. It starts with a radio. Her father wakes her before dawn, not by shouting, but by turning the volume up one notch. A tired voice talks about ships, beaches, code names. Normandy. Helen is old enough now to know that means other people's children are learning what it feels like when the sky really does fall on your street. She walks to the window. Under the apple tree, their steel hut sits exactly where it always sits. The door is shut. The panels are streaked from old rain. It looks completely ordinary. For a girl who once ran out of a flooding wooden box in the middle of a false alarm, ordinary is not boring. It is priceless. Her little brother pads into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Do we need to go in?" he asks. "Not today," her father answers. He says it slowly, like the words are heavy. For years, every unexpected noise meant maybe. Today, for the first time, The biggest noise is coming from a place on the map they will never see. On the other side of the country, Thomas hears about the landings through an open garage door. A neighbor is shouting to anyone who will listen that our boys are on the French coast. The radio in the living room is too crowded with adults, so Thomas drifts to the place that has mattered most in his own war. The steel curve in the garage. Dust has gathered along the base where the last storm pushed water up and the panels sent it back. The closet in the hallway is still full of old rations and the metal bucket, but they have not trained there in months. It already feels like a museum, to a time when fear was less organized. His father stands beside him. "Big day," he says, nodding toward the street, toward Europe, toward everything that is happening far away. Thomas nods back. He's thinking about something smaller, the last real test their neighborhood had. It was not an invasion. It was a moment when nobody could prove the sky was empty. 2 weeks earlier, the warning had come in the most dangerous form. Not an explosion, a sentence. A radio interruption that did not say drill. Unidentified contact. Offshore. Investigating. Nothing confirmed. Nothing denied. On Helen Street, windows lit up one by one, as if the whole neighborhood had the same dream and woke at the same time. A dog barked until someone yelled. Then even the dog went quiet. The sirens started and did not stop when everyone's nerves begged them to. Down the street, wardens in helmets banged on doors. Lights snapped out. Somewhere in the dark, a car hit a tree because the driver was watching the sky instead of the road. Helen's father did not wait for the word attack. He had learned what waiting feels like when water is creeping across a shelter floor. "Masks," he said. "Door. Now." They ran across the yard with shoes half on, the grass wet and cold. The hut waited under the apple tree like a thing that did not know why humans needed it so badly. Inside, the steel smelled clean, not like dirt and rot, not like swollen wood, like something built to be tested and still stand. Her father shut the door and set the timer. The siren outside rose and fell. 10 minutes, 20, 30. Long enough for Helen's thoughts to stop behaving. The old shelter came back in her head in pieces. The wet rung, her brother slipping, her father yanking him up by the arms, the smell of mold that never left the yard, the idea that a place can be built for safety and still become a trap. Her brother whispered, the wooden one would be full by now. Her mother shushed him, but everyone heard the memory. They waited. The steel did nothing dramatic. It did not glow with heroism. It just held. No leaks, no sagging roof, no creeping water. Only a low hum when the wind hit the panels, like the structure was taking the force and refusing to translate it into panic. When the all clear finally sounded, her father did not yell in relief or announce that they were safe forever. He opened the door, looked at the dry floor, and let out a breath that sounded more like exhaustion than victory. Later, the papers called it an overcautious response to an unidentified contact. For Helen, it was something else. Proof that all the nights of practice and all the money spent on steel had bought them not invincibility, but margin. Enough margin that one bad call did not have to turn into a tragedy. In Los Angeles, that same alert arrived like a match dropped into weather. The radio said offshore contact. Then the storm hit hard enough to make the eaves scream. Then the power died. The sirens tangled with thunder so tightly that Thomas could not tell which sound belonged to war and which belonged to the sky. Closet or garage, his father said. It was not really a question. They chose steel. All 5 of them crowded into the curved room as the storm threw itself at the house. rain hammered on shingles, then changed tone as it hit the metal skin overhead, deeper, steadier, like the world had been forced into a lower voice. Water snaked under the garage door and stopped at the first rib. Inside the curve, the air stayed dry. Thomas's little sister started to panic halfway through the alert, convinced this was the night the roof would finally crack. Thomas did the only thing he could think of. He counted, out loud, not seconds to the all clear. Steps in the drills they had practiced. Door, bench, mask, timer. He was not calming her with heroism. He was giving her something the closet never gave them. Space. By the time the sirens cut off, she was still scared, but she had not bolted for the door or clawed at the walls. The next day, they learned it had been a radar ghost and a nervous officer. The city shrugged. Families did not. Kids like Helen and Thomas filed that night away in the same drawer as Pearl Harbor and the first gas mask drill. Not because anyone died, but because it was the first time their country's new habits were tested by real uncertainty and did not crack. By the summer of 1944, millions of American children carry scars from the home front that do not show in photographs. Helen still flinches at certain engine sounds. Thomas still keeps his mask closer to his bed than he needs to. Jimmy in Portland can put a mask on in the dark in under 15 seconds and hates that he knows that number. Margaret in Chicago still tenses when a teacher walks past her desk, even in peacetime. But there is a difference between brittle and hardened. The brittle part was the first phase, when flooded holes, bad closets, and untested plans taught kids that adults could build traps by mistake. The hardened part came later, when people like Otto designed things that were meant to break in tests so they would not break over children's heads. D-Day is the poster date for that shift. While men their father's age are fighting for yards of sand and ocean away, American kids are living with a different front line. Not beaches, sirens, timers, doors that have to open, and shelters that have to deserve their names. Years later, when those children are grown, they will remember the headlines and maps. They will also remember smaller things, the hum of rain on a steel roof that does not give, the way a siren eventually starts to sound like a test more often than a death sentence, the strange, guilty relief of realizing that the war came to their radios and their routines, but never to their street in the way it came to other people's. Pearl Harbor proved that the sky could reach into an American bedroom. Everything that followed, from flooded holes to steel huts, was the country's clumsy, painful attempt to build margin. Helen stands under the apple tree later and rests her hand on the rib. The metal is cool, real, unromantic. It does not promise anything. It only holds. And she thinks, with a clarity that scares her more than the siren ever did, if this fails, there's nowhere left to hide. If you watch this to the end, you're already in a small minority. Most people never finish stories like this. If you think work like this should exist on YouTube, prove it the way the algorithm understands. Leave a comment with what surprised you most. Hit like, so this doesn't vanish under clickbait, and subscribe if you want more long-form history that treats you like an adult, not a child.